the Battle of the Little Bighorn, often referred to as Custer's Last Stand, remains one of the most iconic and hotly debated events in American history. On June 25, 1876, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer led the 7th Cavalry into a devastating defeat at the hands of a coalition of Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. For over a century, historians have analyzed Custer's strategies, the American military's failures, and the overwhelming numerical advantage of the native forces. However, new revelations from Lakota warriors shed light on a deeper, more profound reason behind Custer's downfall. Secrets that challenge the mainstream narrative and offer insight into why this celebrated general met such a disastrous end. As this new perspective unfolds, it becomes clear that Custer's failure was not simply a matter of poor strategy or underestimation of the enemy. Instead, it was a combination of cultural misunderstandings, spiritual warfare, and the undying resilience of the Lakota people. This video delves into these revelations, highlighting the untold secrets shared by Lakota warriors that explain Custer's defeat and the broader significance of the battle for Native American resistance. Custer's tragic defeat at the Little Bighorn is often attributed to a profound underestimation of the native forces. However, the deeper cause lies in the stark contrast between Custer's military arrogance and the tactical brilliance of the Lakota warriors. A closer examination of this disparity reveals a fundamental cultural misunderstanding that sealed the fate of the 7th Cavalry. George Armstrong Custer was no stranger to military success. His reputation as a daring, if not reckless, leader had been cemented during the American Civil War, where he gained national acclaim. However, this very success became his Achilles heel when confronting the Native American forces on the Great Plains. Custer's plan to divide his forces into multiple columns, believing that the Sioux and Cheyenne would scatter at the sight of cavalry, demonstrated his arrogance. He assumed that the mere presence of his men would instill fear in the native warriors, forcing them to flee. This assumption proved deadly. According to Lakota accounts, the warriors were not only prepared to fight but had anticipated Custer's arrival and the flawed strategy he employed. The Lakota warriors, unlike Custer, did not view the battle in isolation. From their perspective, the fight against the 7th Cavalry was part of a larger campaign to defend their land and way of life against relentless U.S. expansionism. In contrast to the segmented, hierarchical structure of the U.S. military, Lakota warfare emphasized fluidity, coordination, and unity among different bands and tribes. The Lakotas' understanding of their land gave them a crucial advantage over Custer's forces. Lakota warriors had grown up on the plains, mastering horsemanship and guerrilla tactics. They used the terrain to their advantage, drawing Custer's troops into a trap by retreating strategically only to counterattack when surrounded. According to Lakota oral histories passed down through generations, the unification of the various tribes, Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho, was key to their success. This unity stemmed from deep-seated spiritual and cultural ties that transcended individual battles, fueling their will to resist even against superior military firepower. Custer, in contrast, misread the motivations of the native forces, assuming they would be more interested in saving themselves than fighting back as a collective force. One of the most revealing aspects of the Lakota explanation for Custer's defeat revolves around spiritual warfare. For the Lakota, combat was not merely a physical endeavor but a deeply spiritual one. Their connection to the land, animals, and ancestors played a central role in their strategy. The victory at Little Bighorn was seen as divinely guided. The role of medicine men and visions was central to Lakota spiritual practices. These individuals were believed to possess the ability to foresee events and guide warriors based on visions received from the spirit world. According to Lakota oral traditions, several medicine men had foreseen Custer's arrival and predicted that he would face total defeat. One of the most famous Lakota medicine men, Sitting Bull, had a significant vision weeks before the battle. In a trance, he saw soldiers falling into the camp like grasshoppers, a symbol of the U.S. forces being overwhelmed by native warriors. This vision inspired and united the various tribes, giving them a sense of purpose and a belief that the Great Spirit was on their side. The Lakota warriors went into battle not just as fighters but as protectors of their sacred land, empowered by a spiritual mandate to resist the invaders. One of the most important Lakota ceremonies, the Sundance, also played a vital role in preparing the warriors for battle. This ceremony, which involved days of fasting, prayer, and physical endurance, was meant to purify the participants and strengthen their connection to the divine. It was during a Sundance that Sitting Bull had his vision of the soldiers falling, which gave the warriors immense confidence, believing that their ancestors and the Great Spirit were supporting them in the coming battle. For Custer and his men, this aspect of warfare was completely alien. The U.S. military relied on technology, weapons, and discipline but had no understanding of the spiritual dimension that motivated the native fighters. The Lakotas' belief in their divine mission was a powerful force multiplier, one that Custer's military training had left him ill-equipped to understand or counteract. The landscape as a weapon, Lakota mastery of the plains. One of the lesser-discussed but crucial factors behind Custer's defeat was the Lakotas' mastery of the landscape. The plains were not just a battleground. They were home to the native warriors. Custer and his men, as outsiders, were at a significant disadvantage from the start. The Lakota, on the other hand, knew every hill, river, and valley intimately, using this knowledge to outmaneuver and overwhelm the 7th Cavalry. The Lakota warriors understood the significance of the Little Bighorn River, which ran through the heart of their encampment. The river provided them with a natural defensive barrier and was a source of life and sustenance. The Lakota had camped along the river not by accident but because they knew it offered a tactical advantage over any approaching enemy. When Custer's forces attacked, they were forced to cross the river, which slowed their movement and disrupted their formations. The Lakota warriors, in contrast, used the river to their advantage, positioning themselves on higher ground and launching attacks from multiple directions. The terrain played a crucial role in the battle, and Custer's unfamiliarity with the land made his forces vulnerable to ambush and surprise attacks. The Lakota and Cheyenne warriors also excelled in guerrilla tactics, something Custer failed to anticipate. Rather than engaging in the conventional warfare that the U.S. military was trained for, the native fighters relied on hit-and-run tactics, using the landscape to disappear and reappear at will. Their superior mobility, especially on horseback, allowed them to outflank Custer's forces and attack from unexpected angles. According to Lakota accounts, their ability to move swiftly across the plains and strike with precision was a key factor in their victory. Custer, who had divided his forces and was stretched thin, found himself surrounded and unable to respond effectively to the native tactics. The Lakotas' knowledge of the land and their agile fighting style rendered Custer's conventional military strategies obsolete. Beyond the physical and tactical dimensions of the battle, psychological warfare played a significant role in the outcome. The Lakota warriors used fear and confusion as weapons, exploiting the disarray within Custer's ranks to their advantage. The shock of the native resistance caught Custer's men unprepared for the sheer ferocity and determination of the native warriors. Many soldiers in the 7th Cavalry had been led to believe that the Plains Indians were disorganized and incapable of mounting serious resistance. When they encountered the highly coordinated and relentless attacks of the Lakota and Cheyenne, it shattered their morale. Lakota oral traditions describe the psychological impact of the battle on Custer's men. The sight of hundreds of warriors charging at them, accompanied by the sounds of war cries, drums, and the constant thunder of hooves, created an atmosphere of chaos and fear. The soldiers, many of whom were inexperienced, quickly became overwhelmed and were unable to maintain their formations or effectively communicate with their commanders. Custer's leadership, once a source of confidence for his men, began to unravel in the face of the native onslaught. Separated from the rest of his forces, Custer found himself isolated and unable to direct the battle. According to Lakota accounts, the warriors focused their attacks on breaking Custer's chain of command, targeting officers and sowing confusion among the soldiers. As Custer's men fell into disarray, their discipline crumbled, soldiers panicked, and some even attempted to flee the battlefield. The collapse of leadership and morale was complete, leaving the 7th Cavalry vulnerable to the relentless attacks of the Lakota and Cheyenne warriors. The revelations from Lakota warriors about why Custer failed at the Battle of the Little Bighorn offer a profound re-examination of the events. While historians have long focused on Custer's tactical errors and the overwhelming strength of the native forces, the insights from Lakota culture reveal a more nuanced understanding of the battle. Custer's arrogance and overconfidence were met with the spiritual conviction, tactical brilliance, and deep-rooted cultural unity of the Lakota warriors. The Battle of the Little Bighorn was not merely a military engagement but a clash of worldviews, strategies, and spiritual beliefs. As we continue to explore this pivotal moment in history, it is essential to recognize and honor the voices of those who lived through it. The native warriors who not only defeated Custer but also redefined the struggle for their land and identity.